Hello again, welcome back to another build challenge. Today's build challenge is in the month of July and I'm working on the steel coaster. So the starting budget for this coaster was 16,000 and a scenery budget of 4,000. So I first subtracted 4,000 from the 16,000, from the 16,000, and I got to a 12,000 budget for the coaster. So I'm aiming to build this coaster for about $12,000. To be honest, this build was one of the most frustrating builds to complete versus some of the other ones I've completed. The layout and position of the coaster changed so many different times. I spent about 2 hours working on this coaster, and I was also very indecisive on the theming, but I finally got a handle on that. So the layout idea for this coaster, I wanted to make sure that I had one inversion and have some type of diagonal section, because I feel like a diagonal piece of track or a section of track makes the coaster look more realistic or more unique versus just following the grid of the game, because the grid of the game can kind of just restrict you in either an L-shaped coaster or a circle layout or something, and so I tried to implement as many diagonal pieces as I can into a layout. So there was a lot of frustrations with this build. I usually haven't been this frustrated recently, but the last couple of days I've been I might be being burnt out by this game, but I'm not sure if I'm being burnt out yet, but I still want to play this game because I do love it still. It's probably why I haven't been posting many YouTube videos in the later weeks, but I digress. Let's just continue as I delete more track and completely redesign it here. But I do want to put into that diagonal, what do you call it, a barrel? It's a barrel roll? Yeah, I want to call it a barrel roll. And you'll see that be actually put in later. So. Oh, before I forget, I named the ride before I got to the theming part, because I was thinking about theming, and I was also indecisive on the theming part too. So, because I try not to repeat myself when I do build challenges, because I have a chance of doing that every so often. So I decided to maybe make it a steampunk type of a ride. So I first give it a name and then I go from there. So I called it Steam Valley. I'll probably type it in later, and then I'll think about what the scenery will be on the station and stuff like that. I ran out of budget quite quickly on this build. The scenery budget is not a lot, and you can get carried away if you're not watching yourself, and I kind of almost did that. But it happens to the best of us. So it happens to me. But what's going to go into the building of the station is going to be steam pipes, gears, wooden walls to bricks. So that's all the themes I knew I had to go for. So on to building the station now. So to get an idea of what you should try to do is don't always look at an empty map, because looking at an empty map really just is so mind-boggling. You don't know what to do. So I try to put down building parts and walls in different shapes and places and just kind of build from there, because looking at a blank map just doesn't work sometimes. So that's kind of the tip I want to give to you guys, that you just start experimenting, basically. Just start placing things down. Delete, remove, do that. I did that a lot for this building, but I had one idea in mind, that the big giant tower square that you see here is going to be the giant steam storage that will hold the steam or whatever it has. Giving a story does kind of somewhat help on where direction you want to go, versus just placing down just trees and rocks and stuff like that. So that's what I try to do, and I hope that I'm presenting this clearly to you guys as possible. The roofing here changes so many times I can't count. So I wanted to make some off-hanging, but it kind of looked too much like an Asian building or too much like a European building, because I wanted to do some like steampunk. So I had to kind of redo it to make it more like a warehouse versus a like a house that someone lives in, because warehouses are kind of built very minimal. They have very minimal roofs and very simple flat roofs and stuff like that. So I kind of just experimented around, and I finally picked with this type of roof, the steep triangle roof. I cut off the top of it later because I put gears in that, because I think gears and pipes really brings out more steampunk stuff, and also brick stuff as well. Also in the challenges, we have to pick one scenery item or one scenery theme. So I already picked my theme right from the beginning because I needed to know what I needed, and then I X'd out all the other ones on the scenery page. And also, as I figured out that I was going for a steampunk theme, I need to build maybe a geyser field or something. So I've done a geyser field before in one of my older builds, was Gold Valley Rush. I think it was called Gold Valley Rush. It's a mine train ride. I built geysers for the first time in that ride, and so I kind of pulled that from there. Geysers are pretty easy to build. It's just they're also very expensive, especially for this challenge, because rocks are expensive. So adding the simple details of the domers, then figuring out where the roof placement on top is, and then I'll put in probably gears later. I almost had a point where I didn't want to finish this build, and that does happen to you sometimes. It's not necessarily a bad thing. The best thing probably would do is to stop and recollect yourself and start over, or maybe do something else, and or you pull some information with somebody else. So the thing is that you try not to overthink it, and sometimes that happens. So, but I finally got into the groove as I started getting details in, because details really what you need to show off a build or a building, because buildings are hard to detail sometimes. So here's off to building the giant cylinder steam storage. Now I got this idea from a video game. I might butcher the name, so here we go. It's called Lintz. What's it called? There it is. Lintz Path of Progress. So it's like a steampunk city builder, and one of the buildings in the game is a steam generator that you hook up to geysers, and then that makes steam, like steam tubes that you use to go into the mines and you drill for materials. And so I kind of pulled that inspiration from that game, because I recently bought it on the Steam sale, and I've been playing that for a little bit, and I like the color orange and the way the cylinder looks. So orange and black and gray is kind of the theme here for this build. So I like that there's a center of something to look at, like your it's like what does silver say? Silver says it's your weenie. That's what it is. Off to build some geysers. I did build 3 in the beginning, and then I deleted one because I wanted to move it over to another helix. Found out that that was not good, or just too expensive. I tried out this different cylinder method for making fake ground, because my signature is I use roofs as a additional ground blueprint versus just painting the ground, because you can't have the ground painted transfer to blueprint, so I use roofs as your ground. And so I do it here with a little bit of the roofing, but I also did it with these cylinders, and I found out these cylinders are quite expensive putting them down in so many little spots. So I scrapped that idea entirely because it just gets expensive. And my budget's falling quickly for the scenery budget, even though I have a lot of budget in my other number. See, you have to keep in mind always your money that you have in the left hand corner has to still hold that 4,000 that you need from that 6,000. So that's why I subtract it, so I know that I need to stop building coaster around 12,000. So that is kind of a strategy of mine. I've done this now 3 times for this type of challenge because Sebastian has been making the challenges a little bit more difficult because I think he wants to stay away from the scenery stuff a little bit because there is somewhat of a voting bias on these challenges that people vote for the most prettiest coasters versus the most, I don't know, stat better coasters, if you can say. So you see here I'm deleting some of the old rocks that I had put down. Rocks are expensive. They take a huge amount of your budget. So I had moved things around a lot. I deleted and repositioned. The cool thing about the challenge is that day doesn't move, time does not move, so you don't lose money when a month comes by or something. So off to make a gauge for the steam cylinder or the steam storage. It can be steam storage or something, or a pressurized tank. I'm going to call it a pressurized tank. So I kind of kept it up. I made that little thing that looks like it's full steam. There's steam pipes coming from it. I'm starting to get in the mood for the coaster. Also what helps me and sometimes the creative juices is that I listen to music that's somewhat themed to what I'm working on. So like if I'm working on a western thing, I'll listen to like cowboy music or something. Or if I'm working on space stuff, I listen to Star Wars or listen to some type of space themed movie. That does help in getting you into the groove of building something that's themed. So I tried to put geysers in every single helix here, but that just didn't turn out well because I just felt like it was empty. I'm also trying to keep in mind keeping things filled in, but I just felt like it was just off the beaten path. It was like not worth it. And also I felt like there was no other cylinders or other pipes that needed to happen. So I added these 3 right here for like steam transfer from the geyser, because in the game that I talked about earlier has this like transfer thing where you put steam collects and then pulls from and then goes into a transfer tank and then goes into the main facility. So that's all what this last section is going to be. So working on just some of that, and I'm getting really close to like having no more budget for my scenery. So this is where the frustration kind of came in, because there was more that I wanted from this coaster, so much more. Now I could make a deluxe version of this coaster if you guys want it. I did this once for one of my builds. I did it for oh, I have to go look. Pine River Railroad? I think that's a mine train coaster. I did it for that one. I made 2 versions of it, and I like doing that because I feel content that I finished it the way that I actually wanted to versus being confined down to this type of rule. But that's the challenge. The challenge is this rule set, and I do like the challenge. It's not horrible. It's just challenging because I want to go full scenery mode because that's me. I want to make everything full on scenery. But I think I'm content with it, and it's out on the workshop. You guys can go vote for it. So we're going to take a quick ride on Steam Valley. I think the stats are... Let me see here. Stats are very high in excitement, medium intensity, and about low nausea. So yeah, off screen I built those catwalks. I didn't mention that earlier. Another idea was I wanted to build some type of catwalk structure going up, but I ran out of budget quickly. So that is my July build challenge, Steam Valley. I will see you guys in the next video.